Patricia's laughter rang out across the table, the kind of performative joy she reserved for audiences, especially when those audiences included her own family. "When Sarah was in the hospital, someone had to step up," she said, reaching for the gravy boat with dramatic flair. "I managed her accounts, sorted the bills, even handled Lily's tuition paperwork, all while keeping my own life afloat." She smiled, lips pursed just enough to be smug, then added, "Not that I'm asking for thanks." Lily, seated beside me, offered a soft, "Thanks, Grandma." And Patricia beamed like a war hero returning home. I smiled too, calm, quiet, then reached beneath the edge of the table and slid the envelope toward her, thick, cream-colored, sealed with a single strip of clear tape. It made the softest sound as it touched her placemat. "What's this?" she asked, pausing mid-sip of wine. "Something I thought you'd appreciate," I replied, "given how much you've done for us." She opened it. At first I watched, her eyes, then her shoulders, then her jaw. All three collapsed in slow, perfect sequence as she scanned the first page. The header was impossible to miss. Internal Revenue Service. Whistleblower investigation findings. Highlighted lines. Annotated charts. A footnote referencing over a decade of unreported rental income. Her fork dropped. Around the table, conversations died one by one as family members glanced up, sensing the shift. Only the soft clink of silverware remained. "I thought since you were so involved in my finances," I said, voice still smooth, "you'd like to see what I found when I looked into yours." No yelling, no accusations, just silence, and one document that weighed more than every lie she'd ever told. And the best part? That was just the beginning. "My name is Sarah Thompson. I'm 38 years old, a single mother, and until recently, someone who believed that family, no matter how complicated, deserved the benefit of the doubt, especially when it came to my daughter's grandmother. I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside Boston with my 17-year-old daughter, Lily. She's the kind of kid teachers remember long after graduation. Bright, kind, the first to volunteer, and the last to give up. Since the day she was born, I've been focused on one thing: building her a future. That meant scraping together every extra dollar, skipping vacations, taking on freelance bookkeeping work after my day job ended. Over the years, I'd managed to save just over $62,000 for her college fund. It wasn't everything, but it was something. A foundation. Lily never asked for more. She knew the cost of things. Not just tuition, but my time, my exhaustion, my fear. And she respected it in ways that broke and healed me all at once. I wasn't always self-employed. I used to work full-time as a tax auditor for the IRS. 10 years of spreadsheets, anomalies, and polite confrontations with people who swore they had nothing to hide. I left the agency after Lily turned 10. The hours were brutal, and I needed flexibility. Doctor's appointments, school plays, sick days. So I pivoted to freelance accounting. Still numbers, still patterns, still the quiet thrill of discovering what others missed, which made what happened all the more painful. 3 months before that Thanksgiving dinner, I was in a car accident. Nothing fatal, but serious enough to put me in the hospital for 3 weeks. Pelvis fracture, 2 cracked ribs, a concussion. I remember waking up to fluorescent lights and the distant sound of a heart monitor. My first thought wasn't pain. It was Lily. Who would take care of her? How would the bills get paid? That's when Patricia stepped in. She visited the hospital that afternoon, holding a bouquet of lilies like some well-rehearsed performance. "Don't worry," she said. "I've got Lily. I'll handle the house, the accounts, the bills. Just rest." I should have known. Patricia has always had a flair for control. She's the kind of woman who makes a donation only after ensuring her name is etched on a plaque. She sends Christmas cards with return addresses in embossed foil and corrects waiters in a tone just polite enough to avoid complaint. She wasn't cruel, just calculated. Over the years, we'd managed a delicate balance. She loved Lily, and Lily loved her back, unaware of the little barbs hidden in her praise, the subtle jabs about my parenting or financial situation. I let it slide, for my daughter's sake. So when she offered to help, I didn't resist. I was too weak to argue and too scared to say no. She asked for access to my accounts, to make sure nothing falls behind. She assured me it was temporary, just until I was back on my feet. I gave her everything. Passwords, account numbers, access to Lily's 529 plan, all of it. From that hospital bed, I had no choice but to trust. What I didn't know then was that I'd handed over more than access. I'd handed her opportunity, and Patricia knew exactly how to use it. The first sign came the day I got home from the hospital. The house was spotless. That alone should have tipped me off. Patricia wasn't the cleaning type. The scent of lavender polish lingered in the air, and my mail was stacked neatly on the kitchen counter. Suspiciously neat. Almost curated. My laptop had been moved, the screen wiped clean. I asked Lily if she'd been using it. She shook her head. Grandma was on it a lot, said she needed to check billing stuff. I logged in. My password had been changed. Patricia said it was for security, that my old one was too easy. Anyone could have guessed it. She laughed. You used Lily's birthday. Not very creative, honey. I told her I'd reset everything. She frowned, nodded slowly, and said, "Suit yourself." A week later, I logged into the account holding Lily's college fund. That's when the second sign hit me like a punch to the chest. The balance was wrong, not off by a little. A full $1,700 was missing. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, jaw clenched. For a moment, I convinced myself it was just market fluctuation. Maybe the investments took a hit while I was gone. But the statement told a different story. Transfer, $7,000. P. Williams. Transfer, $5,800. P. Williams transfer, $5,000. P. Williams all made over the span of 2 weeks while I was still in recovery. P. Williams. Williams was Patricia's maiden name. A name I hadn't seen in years. Until now. When I asked her about it, she didn't flinch. The market was tanking, she said, stirring her tea like we were chatting about the weather. I moved the money temporarily, a short-term investment I was advised on. I was going to move it back. Who advised you? I asked. She smiled. A friend. Private firm. Very discreet. I didn't push. Not then. But something in me hardened. Not just anger. Something colder. The third sign came at the bank. I'd gone in person to get official copies of the statements. Part of me hoping the online records were wrong. As I waited at the counter, the associate, a younger guy named Ben, squinted at his screen and said, "Oh, I remember this. That was a big wire transfer. You came in with your mother, right?" I paused. My mother passed away 10 years ago. Ben flushed. "Oh, sorry. I meant the woman who came in with your daughter. Gray coat, blonde hair." Patricia. He printed the forms. I took them without a word and walked out into the October air, my breath visible, my fingers ice cold, despite the gloves. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, engine running, staring at the numbers on the page. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't poor judgment or a temporary mistake. She'd stolen from Lily. And she did it with the same calm, curated grace she used to set her dinner table. I drove home with one thought, circling like a predator. You picked the wrong person, too. Steal from Patricia. Because while I hadn't worked at the IRS in almost a decade, I still remembered how to trace hidden money. And what she didn't know, what she never even thought to consider, was that I kept every version of her old tax returns. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was angry. Anger was fleeting. What I felt was sharper, more focused, a clarity I hadn't known I was capable of since Lily was born. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing the timeline, matching it to every transaction I'd uncovered. Patricia hadn't just made a mistake. She'd orchestrated it. And I wasn't going to scream or cry or throw her out of my house like some bad soap opera. I was going to do what she never expected. I was going to audit her. The next morning, while Lily was at school and the house was quiet, I pulled out the file box from the back of my closet. Inside were documents I hadn't touched in years. Returns, ledgers, archived tax software, encrypted backups. Old habits die hard. I still did Patricia's taxes every year, even after I left the IRS. She always insisted on using family help over paying a CPA, especially since her finances were simple. A pension, she claimed. A bit of Social Security. Nothing too complicated, I believed her, until now. I started with the most recent return. Her 1040 was clean. Too clean. No supplemental income, no Schedule E for rental properties, no miscellaneous income. But I remembered a vague story she once told at a family barbecue. Something about a little condo she used to rent out to traveling nurses. She said it offhand, like it wasn't worth talking about. That was 2 years ago. I pulled up a property records database and typed in her name. There it was. Not 1, but 3 properties in her name. Or more precisely, in the name of Willowstone Holdings, LLC, a shell company she'd formed 6 years ago. The paperwork listed a registered agent in Delaware, but the mailing address was her home in Newton. One of the properties had been rented out for the past 4 years, according to a publicly listed tenant review. Another showed payment transactions via an online rental platform, and not a single cent of that income appeared on her tax filings. She hadn't just stolen from my daughter. She'd been stealing from the government for years. By noon, I had 2 folders. One labeled Personal Theft, Lily's Fund, the other Federal Fraud, Unreported Income. Both were neatly arranged with source documents, cross-referenced notes, and printable backups. I stared at the folders, fingers hovering over the manila tabs, the weight of them heavier than they should have been. Part of me hesitated, not out of guilt, but out of history. Patricia had helped me through some dark moments. She brought soup when Lily had pneumonia, showed up when I was juggling deadlines and no childcare. She knew how to be warm when she wanted to, but she also knew how to weaponize that warmth, and now she was using it as a shield to justify theft. I thought of Lily, her wide-eyed ambition, the way she'd whispered to me once, "Mom, I want to go somewhere that makes me feel like I matter," and how I'd promised, without blinking, "You will." That promise was worth more than family comfort. That night, I opened a secure online portal to the IRS whistleblower program and began typing. The form asked, "Do you believe this taxpayer has underreported income exceeding $2 million or evaded tax obligations intentionally?" I didn't hesitate. Yes, attached, full documentation, proof of unreported rental income, property holdings, tax returns from the past 7 years. It took 2 hours to compile everything. Before I hit submit, I whispered aloud to no one but myself. She gave me access to my accounts. I just returned the favor. Then I clicked send and closed the laptop like I'd sealed a coffin. The weeks that followed felt almost anticlimactic. Patricia went back to her usual routine. Sunday brunch invitations, unsolicited advice about Lily's senior year, and a suspiciously timed gift basket filled with herbal teas to help me recover. She even offered to drive Lily to campus tours, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't siphoned nearly $18,000 from her granddaughter's future and buried years of untaxed income behind shell companies and polished lies. But I didn't flinch. I smiled. I said thank you, because she had no idea the gears were already turning. Once a report is submitted to the IRS whistleblower program, there's no confirmation, no calls, no emails, just silence. It can take months, sometimes years, for an audit to begin. But I wasn't in a hurry. I'd waited this long to protect Lily's future. I could wait longer. Still, I kept collecting. Every visit Patricia made, I recorded the time, the conversations, the way she spoke about being there for Lily. Every passive-aggressive message she sent about how things would have fallen apart if she hadn't stepped in went into a private archive, not because I needed more evidence, but because I wanted a record for myself. For the day she tried to rewrite the story, like she always did. 3 months after my submission, I got a text from an old colleague, someone I hadn't spoken to since I left the IRS, but who still worked inside. You didn't hear this from me. But a case just opened on a Willowstone Holdings LLC. I stared at the message for a long time, then replied, "Understood. Thanks." The audit had begun. What followed was a quiet unraveling. Patricia didn't know anything was wrong at first, but did. I watched her closely. She started canceling dinner plans. Her emails got shorter. One day she called in a panic, asking if I had a copy of her old property tax records. I told her I didn't. I did. 2 weeks later, Lily came home with a confused look. "Grandma's been super weird," she said. She was talking about maybe selling her lake house. Said something about needing to consolidate. She air-quoted the word. "What's that about?" "Probably nothing," I said, setting dinner on the table. "Just grown-up stuff." But it wasn't nothing. One morning I received a thick envelope in the mail, unmarked except for a return address in Ogden, Utah. I knew the format before I even opened it. IRS, Whistleblower Award Determination. I unfolded the letter slowly. My pulse didn't even quicken. I just read. Patricia's underreporting had spanned nearly 11 years, 3 properties, 2 LLCs, over $270,000 in undeclared rental income. The audit had resulted in a total recovery, between back taxes, penalties, and fines, of $183,000. And my share, $50 for $900, tax-free. I closed the envelope and sat in silence. It was more than justice. It was restoration. That afternoon, I transferred the full amount into a new 529 account, under Lily's name. Fully secured, password protected, dual authenticated, with me as sole custodian. Then I shredded the old account records. What Patricia had taken was gone. But what mattered had been rebuilt, stronger, safer. I didn't tell Lily. Not yet. I wanted her to find out when the moment was right. And it came soon enough. Thanksgiving. One long table. One long reckoning. Thanksgiving arrived with the usual fanfare. Roasted turkey, cranberry sauce no one touched, and Patricia's favorite centerpiece of white lilies arranged like she was accepting an award for Most Devoted Matriarch. She arrived 15 minutes early, of course, wearing pearls and a cardigan the exact shade of political neutrality. Lily greeted her with a hug. I offered a smile, warm but controlled. It was the first time all year that the whole family had been in one room. Cousins, uncles, aunts, everyone seated at the long oak table in my sister-in-law's dining room. Patricia took her usual spot near the head, beside Lily, and halfway through the meal, with the kind of confidence only delusion can breed, she cleared her throat and lifted her wineglass. "I just want to take a moment," she began, eyes damp, with self-importance, "to say how proud I am of our family, and how grateful I am that I was able to help hold things together while Sarah was recovering." She turned slightly, her eyes meeting mine with that subtle sugar-coated edge. "When Sarah was in the hospital, someone had to keep things moving. Bills, Lily's school. None of it stops just because life throws a curveball." Heads nodded. Someone muttered, "That's true." And Patricia's smile widened like a woman soaking in applause. She went on, her voice buttery. "Of course, I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because that's what family does." I took a sip of water, let the silence settle. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out a thick white envelope, and laid it gently on the table between the gravy and the sweet potatoes. The noise of cutlery paused. Patricia looked at it. "What's this?" I smiled. "A little something to thank you for everything you did while I was recovering." She opened it, expecting a card, maybe a note. Instead, her expression froze. Her mouth parted, but no sound came. Her fingers gripped the pages tighter as her eyes scanned line after line. On top was the official header, Internal Revenue Service. Whistleblower case, resolution. Below that, findings of unreported income, civil penalties, and asset seizure documents related to Willowstone Holdings, LLC. Every number was highlighted, every transaction traced. The entire table went quiet. "What is this?" someone asked. Patricia tried to speak, but the words came out in fragments. This is private. Where did—" "It's public now," I said, voice calm. "Or it will be soon. You see, while I was lying in that hospital bed, you were draining Lily's college fund. But I figured it out. I tracked every transfer, and when I started looking into where the money went, I found something else." Her eyes darted between the pages, then up at me. "You did this?" "No," I said. "You did this. I just filed the paperwork." Lily blinked. "Wait." "What?" I turned to her, softer now. "Your college is covered, sweetheart. Completely. The fund's back, bigger than ever. Courtesy of the IRS Whistleblower Reward Program." She looked between me and Patricia. "You got a reward for turning her in?" I nodded once. $54,900. Deposited 3 weeks ago. Patricia pushed the papers away like they might burn her fingers. "I didn't mean to," she started. "To steal?" I offered. "Or to get caught?" No one spoke. My brother-in-law coughed and looked down at his plate. My niece slowly covered her mouth with one hand. "I helped you," Patricia hissed, low and venomous. "And now," I said quietly, "you've helped me too." The room stayed silent, not angry, not accusatory, just stunned, the kind of silence that comes when the curtain falls, and the lights come on, and everyone realizes the play they've been watching was a lie. I leaned back in my chair, picked up my fork and said, "Now then, who wants pie?" And just like that, dinner resumed, except nothing was the same. Patricia didn't stay for dessert. She gathered her things with trembling hands, muttering something about indigestion, and left without making eye contact with anyone. The door clicked shut behind her like a gavel. Coming down. No one followed. The rest of the family, to their credit, didn't say much. There were a few awkward bites. Someone cleared their throat. And eventually conversation drifted back to college plans, football, and what time Best Buy opened the next morning. But something had shifted. A wall had cracked, and behind it people were beginning to see her clearly for the first time. Lily sat beside me, still processing. Her plate was untouched. "You knew all this time?" she whispered. I looked at her and nodded. Not all, but enough. She frowned, her voice low. "Why didn't you say something earlier? Before tonight?" I reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, like I used to when she was small. Because it wouldn't have been enough to just call her out. I needed it to matter. I needed you to have what she tried to take away. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she said the only thing that truly mattered. "Thanks, Mom." The next few weeks passed quietly. Patricia didn't reach out. No emails, no calls. She skipped Christmas for the first time in 15 years. Lily asked if she was okay, and I told her the truth. I don't know. But that's not our responsibility to fix. I did hear whispers, though, from neighbors, from family, that Patricia had sold her vacation home, that she was downsizing, that her name had been quietly removed from a local foundations board after a financial review. The IRS doesn't send out press releases, but reputations, once cracked, tend to crumble on their own. Meanwhile, Lily started receiving acceptance letters. Not just 1 or 2, 5. Good schools, competitive ones. She cried when she opened the letter from Tufts. I cried when she showed me the financial aid gap that we could now afford to close. No loans, no debt. Just a clean start, funded not by luck or generosity, but by justice. One morning, while packing her things for an early campus visit, she stopped and asked me, "Do you think Grandma regrets it?" I paused, then said, "People like her don't regret what they do. They regret getting caught. But what if she apologized?" Lily asked softly. "Then we'd listen," I said. But we wouldn't forget. That spring, as I watched my daughter walk across the stage in her cap and gown, I thought about everything it took to get her there. Every shift I worked late, every spreadsheet I had combed through, every lie Patricia tried to bury. Lily looked up at me from the podium, eyes shining, and I realized something. The college fund wasn't the only thing I'd protected. I'd protected her sense of right and wrong, her belief in fairness, her trust in me, not by screaming or threatening, but by being deliberate, patient, precise. I never raised my voice. I never needed to. Because sometimes the strongest revenge is restoration. And in the end, Lily didn't just walk away with her future intact. She walked away knowing that no one gets to steal from us and stay smiling. Not without consequences, and not when I'm watching. And that's how I learned that revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes, the most powerful retaliation isn't screaming in someone's face. It's filing paperwork. It's patience. It's restoring what was stolen, and making sure it never happens again. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, I hope this story reminded you. You're not crazy. You're just waking up. What would you have done in my shoes? Let me know in the comments. And if this hit close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like, follow, and stay tuned for more stories where justice is personal.